Welcome to Simply Felicity podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Felicity Joy, and I have another author with me here today. Not only that, but an author that was kind enough to read my book that's going to be coming out pretty soon. And I'm really thankful to him for giving me some feedback. But we are here to celebrate, I believe, his first book. Am I right?
That's correct.
And his first book is called The Infinite One. Welcome with me out there in Facebook land, Tom Juliano. Thank you for being here with me.
Hello, sure. It's such a pleasure. Thanks for having me on, Felicity. Appreciate this.
As I was looking at the beginning of the book, it looks like that perhaps the idea for the book came after a difficult time in your life or a time when you were reconciling some things that were going on. It's kind of the story that seems to lead off with, actually, it's kind of a dramatic beginning. I guess I won't give it away. You've got to see it. I was like, wait, what? but but it begins, you begin to reveal what you mean there. But I'd love to know, like, what was the impetus for the book and what it meant for you, really taking the journey of the book.
Sure, absolutely. That's a great question. And you may or may not realize this, but um, that some of that dark time that I was describing was when I was trying out to um, start a business, start Neighbor Chain,
And that's kind
and
of the last time you and I connected.
yes, yes. And so I was just kind of in this very dark place, like while I was operating, where it wasn't gaining the traction that I kind of needed to keep going forward with it or justify going forward with it. And I want to share with you too, how grateful, thankful that I am for you, because if you remember, this was probably about still about 5 years ago, maybe. And we had connected at a business networking meeting, but
Right.
then afterward we had met one on one. I think it was like at a Baker Square,
Okay.
maybe.
Okay. I
And
just remember meeting. I remember Neighbor Chain. I remember talking to you about it.
okay, but you, like, your energy at that time, it was so positive. It was just so much light that I mean, I needed that at that time. And looking back at it, having people like you chime in and say, don't give up on this. Don't let this idea go. And, you had encouraged me, inspired me, told me how you had talked with your neighbors, and that, the effort kind of wasn't lost. Maybe it wasn't going to be a successful business model, but it still had some effects.
It seems
Um,
like the heart of it has morphed
yeah,
into, something you're doing in your community. And we'll talk about that later. But also, perhaps without that effort, this book wouldn't have come either. So that's pretty cool.
that's a great point. Yeah, I would say that's definitely true. It's like your path, and part of the theme of this book too is that even if we don't realize it in the moment, that we all have, it's like all the I believe that all of the ways that nature operates, what we know, um, looking at the science of space and time and matter and energy and things, and how life has continued to evolve and flourish on Earth, that there's a lot of those things through the process of writing this book that just kind of was like, man, like everything really has to be the way that it is. Like,
Mm.
you don't have to love it while it's happening to you. It doesn't mean you have to be like, yay, everything's positive all the time. But just to kind of recognize on a higher level, and I think this was part of my own personal education over the last handful of years, especially, of like, hey, those like dark moments that you can have, like, they're they're put there by a power that is beyond us, that is above us. And I feel like there's plenty of reason to use those moments to springboard off of and transition from and push against, and also, to see yourself more clearly, to be more honest with yourself for what you are,
Mm.
and kind of allow some of that chaff to shake out as life goes on.
So it reminds me of when you talked in the book about the necessity of black holes, which, like, first of all, how much does the average person know about a black hole anyway? You don't even really hear about black holes, but to hear that the way the universe operates, like they're necessary to have. So, there could be any infinite number of things that are necessary for our life to be the way it is that, like, we don't even know that much about, or we don't really even understand, or isn't acknowledged. Like something like your armpit, which is something you don't look at. But there it is with a necessary function, right? Like if your armpit didn't work properly, I don't even know, you know, what you'd have to go through to get those things working properly. But um, would you say like the questions that you ask and the answers that you come up with in the scientific way all were kind of proofs for you that, well, what would you say it was proof to you of things like that with the black hole?
Mm. That's a great question, because I feel like, I've met so many people with so many different perspectives, kind of been exposed to a lot of ways to get at truth, whether it's through artistic expression, whether it's through, spiritual teachings and writings, or whether it's science, that it's like the way I think those have converged to me have not necessarily been like a singular type of track, but they all, like, I see them all feeding into the same thing, and reaching a lot of the same conclusions. Like once you put them under the microscope, so to speak, that they're all kind of pointing us to the same direction of unity and connection, and of shared purpose, and of a shared sacredness that's around us. So for me, this book was kind of an exploration, um, of one way that I kind of, hadn't necessarily seen too much, with other books that I read. Sometimes they're spiritual, sometimes they're scientific, sometimes they're, about, say, the metaphysical or something, but not necessarily books that crossed over things that we know to be scientifically true, but how they inform, things that are of a more spiritual nature,
Mm.
perhaps. So it was a little bit of a challenge to me at first, but I wanted to kind of read, or write a book that was more, that illuminated a little bit more for either someone who has theistic beliefs or potentially an atheist, saying, hey, no matter what track you feed into, like, it still points to this life is awesome and amazing and full of, this limitless potential. Whether you have a scientific background or if you don't have a scientific background, that you're still able to read this book and, pick out things, and things are explained in a way that, is understandable to someone who's just being introduced to those topics. And so that was kind of the goal of, you know how can I write this in such a way that a variety of backgrounds, people with backgrounds or beliefs, can work through some of these topics, and hopefully come to some deeper spiritual conclusions.
Well, I am all about that. I think that any work that deals with connection is part of that work that is um, really something I like to do when I do my community work is talk about, is about bringing down the suicide rate.
Mhm.
It's like it's a huge deal. Um, it's something that this period of shutdown has only, driven the numbers of that up.
Right.
And so we are really still desperately like craving and needing connection, right? And so I think like to be able to reach as many people as possible with that message of connection, with a message of hope, is fantastic. Um, I can say uh I mean, I can say confidently for myself, I've never read anything like it. Um,
Hmm.
it is very, very unique. And if you're, looking for something unique, something different to hit you a little bit differently, I would highly recommend The Infinite One by Tom Giuliano because it comes at you like from a totally different place. And to your point, I think people with that have a lot of like maybe even agnostic or like a lot of questioning, I think it's helpful because it allows people to come to their own conclusions. Like you said, things are pointing. They point somewhere, right? But I don't know that you try to wrap it up in a bow and make the point. You're like helping people to see how you came to certain conclusions, or at least the conclusion that life was worth living again, that you could try again and why, you know? So it's very powerful and it's very interesting, very creative the way that you do it.
Excellent. Well, thank you. I'm thankful for that, Felicity. That means a lot to me coming from you. Um, yeah, and that was kind of a goal of mine to have the book more raise questions, maybe gently or lightly suggest some possibilities to answers of those questions. But you're right. It's some people that reviewed it and things had said, hey, it kind of feels like it's like an extended like meditation, like mixed with science. You
I
know,
think that's a good way to put it. I think that's a good way to put it. And actually, so you said something I also never saw, which is I think in the beginning you said if you have like any suggestions or something for a future edition of this book, email me or whatever. I was like, who does that? I don't know. It's just really cool. Um, but kind of just opening up community right there, even in the beginning of the book. And I would like to say my suggestion that description, I think for someone like me who's a little bit more of a meaning maker, would
hmm
be really helpful because a lot of people have been introduced to meditation at this point, and or at least like if they more associate with prayer, they could think of meditation as quiet prayer or whatever, contemplative prayer. And so I think that that would be a fantastic way to approach reading the book.
Okay.
Um, to be in that headspace that this is like a mix of those would be really, really good. Because I mean, yeah, you want to like set people up for success. And if I weren't interviewing you, I mean, it was so different for me that I don't even know if I would have pushed as hard as I did to continue in it, but I was glad I did. But I think if I had had that setup, it, I would have clicked into a different space to be able to continue on.
I
I
see.
felt I felt like I was totally getting a ride into your brain,
Good, good.
which was like, woo! and
Yeah.
and I would also say like I'm not very detail oriented. So like it was like Oh my gosh, it's so many details, you know? But in a meditative space, that's super cool, right? If you're just kind of going along the journey.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of, I think, toggles between the two because it throws some things at you
Yeah.
and then it'll ask you to sort of, think about it, dwell on it, do a kind of quick check of yourself and the things that are around you
Hmm.
for that. So, yeah, that's great feedback to kind of make that a little bit louder, maybe in the beginning.
Yeah, like just suggested Ray, a suggested way to read or, something that a reader had said. 'Cause like now I kind of want to go back and read some things like from that headspace. Um, and I think it'll be really cool. So I hope I'm getting you guys very intrigued out there. Um, but how did it feel like once you finished and once you got it out? Like, what has been the impact on you?
Hmm. That's a great question. This was, I maybe I should back up just a little bit, and just say, all like a lot of the events having to do with, COVID and a lot of the racial unrest that happened after Breonna Taylor and George Floyd, and that continues around, situations with Jacob Blake. Like a lot of that, there was a point where it sort of, I don't know, it just sort of just like really, really got under my skin where it
Mhm.
was and I didn't know how to respond. Like it was like, oh, this is so frustrating that we're still in this reality that this is unfolding, in our world. And so it was more almost like a guttural sort of response, I guess, like this book was, because in my head I was thinking, if people were able to just dwell on or think a little bit more about this or these things, maybe some of these tensions would help to diminish them a little bit. And maybe it would help people to have a little bit more perspective around uncertainty where, if we zoom way out, we take
Yeah.
kind of a most zoomed out, perspective of the universe, or we zoom way into our bodies and what's going on in the super, super small scale, that it's like once we come back to this scale, like what's right in front of us, maybe we can think a little bit differently about that. So it was written rather quickly, I would say. It took me a couple of months to put it together, and it was not necessarily on at first on the top of the list of summer projects or things to do. But it just kind of, when I started writing it, it just kind of came out, and I had a good feeling of like where I wanted it to go and how it wanted to conclude. So the writing process to me was fairly interesting because it was almost like I was outside of myself, like observing myself writing this, almost in an, I don't want to say an automatic way, but close to a way that required, not so much consideration and thought, like while it was coming out, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. Just like it flowed through you.
Yeah, it was just kind of there, and it took a while to get out. So it was, of course, males are not blessed with the ability to bear children, but but this is I think it's kind of, like I see of something similar, in that vein of something that, you know I put together during a period of time, and now I'm able to um, help get this message out. And the response so far has been just awesome. Like I've had a lot of really, really great conversations around, people that I know, friends and family, that have read the book and reviewed the book and just keep rooting it, say yes, we need more of this message in the world. And it's really too, I mean, I know you're interviewing Tom Giuliano, but
Oh, yes, the name of the author.
yeah, so I did put it on here. I do have a copy of it. So I use the pseudonym A Grateful Human. So if someone's looking for it, you'll find it under that author name. But I
Yeah.
but I did feel like it was appropriate. Like I don't necessarily want it to be associated with like my ego per se, or my, like my persona, but just talking about things in that book like I didn't discover. Like they're not mine. It's more of a book about us, and it's a book about all of humanity, all of life. And so I felt it important to have that theme around, the totality of the work. I don't put names. There's really no names inside of the book of
Right.
who discovered what, when they discovered it, where it was discovered, because I just wanted that focus around the ideas, and this realization of we are one gigantic organism that is feeding each other, and I believe are charged, within the fabric of our existence. We're charged to be unitive.
I it really thrills me that you would open yourself up to allow this message to come through you. And I think that that's where understanding about ego and doing work to diminish that and stuff is so important, because I know I've like been really outspoken about white guilt
Mm,
and just really helping people to be free of that, and to say that if you let your identity silence you in this hour, like it's going to be a problem. You know, we need all the voices to come together, and we don't need people being so overburdened by guilt or feeling like there's no way they can understand and they're not going to speak on it or whatever, because that's just not the reality of what we're actually dealing with. Um, we need each other. We need each other's voices. We need each other's input. And um, so I just think it's really important, and that even though, you use the pseudonym and everything, but I'm glad you're here to represent the book. And again, like I'm just glad you didn't disqualify yourself from letting the message come through you.
mm. Right, thank you. Yeah, me too. Me too. I'm glad I didn't do that as well. And I think, one thing that you said, resonates a lot with me. And I think, it's one of the themes that's inside of the book. And it's really that, yeah, no matter what you are, it doesn't matter what age you are, what gender, what, race, where you live, how much money you make, what language you speak, any of those things, you know, start to become, small details when you zoom out and you
Mhm.
look at the specialness of humanity. I'm not saying that we're at the point in history where those things don't matter to anybody. you know, uh, I don't want to say that we're even close. I feel like we're moving toward that, in different ways. But yes, it's like everybody has a different life. We were all born into a different soul, that has its own unique perspective, right? it's such a gift, in the sense that you see things, you experience things, you have certain passions that I don't. And when you share with me, it gives me a little bit of window to be able to look into a life that I can never live, and that I can never be. And the same thing is true with anyone that you meet. It's like, you have a little piece, like I've got a little piece, they got a little piece over there. It's like everyone has this tiny little piece, um, that, once you start accessing so many of those pieces, it's like, it's like pixels on a screen, and you can start to see the picture, as you zoom out a little bit, and it just becomes just more and more beautiful the longer you dwell and look on that, in my the way I've experienced it.
Well, I think I was talking to a friend actually from South Korea. I get to, you know, at this point, me teaching her English is just us having conversation, and she likes to just keep it going. But I was talking about how scientists do have an awesome ability to be able to see spiritual truths on a different level, and there will even be people looking to disprove spirituality from a scientific perspective that actually become more spiritual. Um, because whether you're either zooming in or zooming out, there are a lot of clues um, to divine design and to like the fact that randomness isn't random, you know, and that uniqueness and everything all plays a part in that. So, and I just want to say, like, even though, like you said, we may not be at the point that to say that those certain things don't matter in terms of skin color or that kind of thing, but I think that, again, the importance of all the voices is to be able to say that it's all right to say that it doesn't matter to me. That I only like it because I can just appreciate difference. And if we all look the same, it just quite frankly wouldn't be as cool as us not all looking the same, you know. But it's okay to say that. And it's okay for someone else to have a different experience where they weren't treated that way. But it's just like all the voices really are super important in all of the experiences as well. So I did want to give a chance to mention, it kind of feels like to me that Neighbor Chain morphed into, some of the work that you're doing with the community, even today being the closing night of this uh, T-ball, is it?
Yes, yeah, we do. It's a t-ball group in our neighborhood.
Yeah, something that started small and now you got all these kids.
Yes, yeah, yeah. There were about 45 that wanted to join us this year.
That's
So
amazing. And you just play in the community and have little teams they play each other, or?
we do, yeah. It's really, um, it's really like organic, which is a cool thing about it. It was something that myself and another dad in the neighborhood started about 4 years ago, and we just said, hey, we want to teach our kids. We have two daughters, and they have a daughter and a son. So we want to teach our kids t-ball, but let's just see if there's anyone else in the neighborhood that wants to join. So we can just kind of maybe have enough people for a game or a team or something to play against each other. And it was like there was such a longing that we kind of tapped into,
Mm,
that we never knew was really there, because we were thinking the first year, maybe if we get like 3 or 4 extra people, like we're doing good. And the first year we got, I don't remember if it was like 20 or 25.
wow.
And it was so beautiful because we, the neighborhood that we're in is pretty diverse, and you get, different, different ages of kids, different ethnicities, um, different, boys and girls. So it was like really just kind of a mix of kids, and then the parents helping out. Like, so it wasn't just like us saying everything to do. We're like, hey, whoever wants to jump in, help out. And so it's just been like this incredible witnessing of, people coming together, having different suggestions. Hey, let's try this at practice today, or hey, we want to bring this snack in this week or that. And we've had to modify that stuff this year a little bit with COVID, unfortunately. But just seeing the contributions of everyone in our neighborhood, and then allowing people to experience each other, not just say it as an idea, but actually experience it. And so many people have reported, like by the end of the season, they're like, we met so many people from the neighborhood this way, and it's been great. In our, we do it during the summer, so it's a nice period of time that's a gap where the kids don't, even if they know each other, they don't get to talk to each other much. And the older kids helping the younger kids figure stuff out, and they get out during the game, and older kids being able to say, hey, it's all right, and giving them hugs. And so there's a lot of just variety of tender moments, and people chipping in to see it as a like a just a really nice dynamic, like between everybody. So it's been super fun.
What an incredible offering to your community. And I mean, it just sounds like the mission takes on a life of its own, and you got an opportunity to get on the train of it again. Probably because of the seed that you sowed, earlier, showing your interest and your desire to be a part of that work. So that is such a cool opportunity that opened up for you, and I love it. I love it to
Yeah,
pieces. I hope that people listening are inspired, um, to think about what kind of community do you want to live in. And I would say that most people would say they want to know their neighbors. They'd like to be involved with each other and to begin to develop those relationships. Um, but it's about, intentionality and doing something. And both Tom and I are here to attest, even if your first effort at that doesn't work, you know, like just show that that's something you want, and you'll get the opportunity, um, to be a part of it, because I believe that we can say what we desire our communities to be like, and we don't have to just settle for driving into the garage and driving out of the garage and never really knowing those people that live around us. So thank you for that good work.
absolutely. Yeah, and to you too, because I know we had a conversation a little bit too about how you were bringing a lot more people into your home, like for dinners and things like that as well
Yeah,
too,
yeah, I
right?
do like a monthly community dinner, and it's something that, I read in a book and studied different countries that rank high on the happiness scale. And that's something they do. They just get to know their neighbors that way. And so I've had neighbors there. I've had people that don't live that close but need community. So I'm all good with it. And when the shutdown happened, there were a lot more people that needed that community, frankly. And I don't know, like, with a lot of churches being shut down, I think some of that stuff may end up morphing into just people getting together and being community to each other. In the past, like 5 months or so, like I'll line up a speaker just to talk on something. And one time we did like fun as a topic, and one time we did vision, and just do all kinds of things. But We eat together, and then I have people that join us on Zoom, and I put the computer at the table, like another
Perfect.
chair. Oh, it's just been fun. So, but it gives me an opportunity to talk to my neighbors and invite them and give them an opportunity to come. So, there's all kinds of things that we can do when we're willing to step out of our box, maybe look a little weird asking a
Yeah.
question. People may or may not want to talk, but a lot of people do. And that's the important thing to know, that for those people, you created an opportunity. So,
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think, you mentioned an important thing about that whole like stepping out of your box where it's like the first time you do it, like you're like, yeah, maybe this feels kind of weird. Like what if what if I don't know these neighbors and what if they try to steal something from me? And like all these little things kind of go through your head. Um, but yeah, a couple years back we started to do some like neighborhood like potlucks that kind of spawned off of the t-ball, really, of like, okay, when it's not summer, how do we continue the fellowship and getting together? And at first it was like, people going to think that it's weird. And in the very very beginning, we didn't have too many families in with it, just a small handful. But then even that is like grown over time, and the
wow.
desire than that. But I totally feel you on that one, Felicity, where like the very first time you're just like, am I qualified to do this? Am I Will people respond if I put this out there? And there's, I experience a lot of self-doubt, especially in the initial stages. And then when you look back at those moments, you're just like, no, people actually really like this. Like, what was I thinking?
Yeah, yeah. And we have to know our own motivations, but like, if you can find a way to kick yourself out of your comfort zone. Mine is like, and what if nothing changes? I get so bored, and like, and
Mm,
there are things that I don't like the way they are. I don't like not knowing my neighbors. I don't like not getting together. So, so I'll ask myself that question and then push myself on to the next door.
good, good for you. Yeah, that's the Gandhi quote, right? Be the change.
Be the change.
Be the change.
Right.
Yeah, instead of there's a lot of room to complain, right, about ways. But I mean, even when they talk about a true democracy, what that means, it's participating.
Yeah.
It's creating. It's trying to even if you feel it's a small way to jump in and do something, um, instead of nothing. Instead of just hours of TV at night.
Yeah. And that nothing weighs on you. It you get sad, right? About the things that you see that you don't like, that you're not doing a ding dong thing. Like, you know, frankly, and that'll weigh on you. But even knowing that you're doing something, even if it's not successful, I I really believe that I'll either be the change or I'll be a seed.
Mm,
And it may not be this initial thing that I'm trying to make happen, but I'm sowing toward it. And I feel better doing something, you know. Um, so success is seeing yourself do the things that you'd like to see happen. And that change of a definition can prevent some of that fear of failure. Because I feel already success for trying, you know, it's daring something big instead of just like going along, right, with the way things are. That to me does not feel successful.
yes, yeah, and I think you're speaking with a lot of wisdom too, and experience of various things and pathways that you've experienced in your own life. And yeah, talking about being a seed, and starting things. I think that's a great metaphor where sometimes it's like you do something, right? Like you can do something that you say think is a small thing, or you encourage somebody in a small way, or
Wow.
you point something out and you say, hey, like have you ever thought about, trying to whatever, try to write a book, or trying to become a coach, or trying to become a police officer or whatever, you know um, just giving sometimes those suggestions to people, or just being that tiny seed. Like you don't know what what is in store for future moments of how those waves are going to continue fanning out for that seemingly small action that you did, or that small smile that you gave to somebody when they were having a down day.
Yeah. Like the encouragement you said I gave you. No
Yeah,
way
you
I could
kind
have pictured you ending up here.
of
I
yeah,
show
right.
with a book written after the business didn't work. I mean, like, I love it. That's exactly what the book is about, guys. So make sure you go and look up author A Grateful Human. And the book is called The Infinite One. And I'm so thankful that you stopped by here today. Thank you, Tom.
Excellent. Thank you, Felicity. It's always a joy.
Thanks so much. We will connect again soon. And with you, I will see you next week on my Simply Felicity viewers. Thanks for being here. Bye.